Do you love mutant girls? Of course you do. What other reason would you have actually clicked on this video and you're watching it right now? Now, a couple of weeks back, I was actually browsing the internet as you do, researching stuff, when I found a weird manga inside of a bit of a collection, and the title alone was weird enough since I actually like weird stuff. So, amongst that, I actually decided to actually read it, and it was the first time I actually found a manga in its early infancy. Aside from Torjin X, which I usually find mangas around chapter 50, which is good since I actually really like binge reading sometimes, but this was different. It was still in its single digits, and it was fairly interesting enough that I actually started reading the first chapter, which was good enough to let me actually continue reading. So I decided to read it after catching a glimpse of the synopsis, which really did not give much information as to what I was about to read, but I still read it anyway. Now, the synopsis of this whole book is actually quite weird because the world was devastated by a nuclear war, and now there are mutants walking around, and the story starts off with our friend, a mutant who is desperate for a girlfriend. Isn't there anybody like him out there? But there's no humans left, or at least seems that there are, when the mutant meets the girl and he falls in love with her. In a desolate landscape, and different kinds of love burn fiercely and sadly and purely. And that's just the synopsis. It doesn't really tell you much about the whole story, but it only tells you about the two most important characters, while not preluding to some of the more important characters that might show up later on, and doesn't actually incline to tell you about the nature of our mutant main character at all. Anyway, from what I've gathered about the world and its people, before we actually look at the cast of characters, it seems that most people who aren't mutants wear masks. That kind of sounds familiar, but it seems that they seem to have a job where they can hunt mutants, and I'm assuming when they hunt these mutant beasts, and if they succeed, they can get gems or orbs from the mutants, and then they sell them in their own type of market where they get money from it. But the story doesn't really delve deeply into the description of why or how does that market actually work, because it's more inclined on comedy and characters rather than world building, but I really don't mind that. And if you want to actually go further than this, I'm assuming you're already familiar with the story, or you already know that there's going to be spoilers beyond this point, because I'll be describing characters by referencing certain actions they do in the manga as such. And the first character we're actually going to look at is our main character, which is the mutant called Mutaro, which technically is his nickname that was first given in the first chapter by his crush Rin, and from there he actually fell in love with her within 2 pages after meeting her, and he boldly professes his love for her immediately after those 2 pages, but he was soundly rejected. Well, sort of rejected, aside from the weird habit of getting hard every time Rin touches him, let's ignore that. When you read further, apparently Mutaro is considered the king of mutants, or at least he's considered as someone who actually has the potential to be the king of mutants, and from the latest chapter, which is chapter 9, last time I've read. But then again, it's further explained when you continue reading that he's been born from the heart of the first mutant king, the first mutant who was very kind, which also kind of contributed to Mutaro not having any form of contact with mutants or humans for the past several years of his own life, aside from anything that wasn't a mutant beast, which resulted in him being depressed and kind of clingy, considering that the first person he actually straps himself along to is Rin the moment he actually sees her. Also, his status of a king kind of puts a mark on him, on his head, where since certain people would actually like to, how should I say this, bear his children. So basically they want to take his family jewels personally, which is a rough rendition of what I actually want to say. It's the most PG-13 I could say it. Aside from Mutaro being the main character, we also have 2 characters that are female at the beginning of the story, and I would actually like to focus on Rin, considering that she's the first one who we know about in the beginning of the story. So in the beginning, we're actually introduced to Rin, who was apparently hunting mutants to pay for her mother's hospital bill for her to actually get better since she was contaminated, and I'm assuming they took a mask off her, a mask fell off at some point. and she also underwent somewhat of multiple human experiments. This is kind of explains why she's so strong in a way. When she actually went to the lands to actually beat down a bunch of mutant beasts, she's actually comparable to actually hold her own while beating a bunch of mutants alongside Mutaro. And now since she knows that Mutaro likes her, she kind of goes to his place due to an incoming storm. But since her reasoning is that, and I quote, "This is a good chance for you to score some points with me," I feel like she doesn't really have a best interest for him, considering that earlier within that same chapter of her before the storm, she kind of almost backstabbed her. But once he heard the reasoning for her trying to backstab him, he kind of just forgave her. He's an idiot. Anyway, on another note, we have a second mutant named Porchi. Doesn't really speak any human languages, and the self-proclaimed Mutaro's girlfriend, who subsequently picks a fight with Rin immediately after seeing her for the first time, and also multiple times when Mutaro isn't actually there because he got hard from thinking about loot stuff. And right before they fought, she decided to transform into a different form in order to actually defeat Rin, but that didn't turn out as well as she thought would happen, since Mutaro came back after she was subsequently knocked out, and she basically tries to tell him that he was actually in a dangerous position where dangerous people are actually looking for him and are coming after him. But there was a problem. There was a language barrier problem, and this basically was kind of resolved after a few minutes, where she actually got so angry that she started being proficient in the language and started swearing. Profanity and proficiency go hand in hand, okay, people? And this actually was where she actually warned Mutaro that there was three types of mutants that were sort of coming after his life, technically, and they were coming after Mutaro, while she was also giving a warning to Rin that if she wants to stay next to Mutaro, she has to be strong enough to stay next to him as his queen. And I'm using air quotes here, so I don't know. Well, she was probably just threatening her so that she could leave him alone, which is what I was assuming. And this actually leads us to our next group of people. Then to be more exact, it's the most dangerous people who are coming after Mutaro. They were ancient garbs that would make any man's knees weak. They are the three high-tier mutant girls. Yes, mutant girls. So, since we don't know a lot about them, considering that I'm using reference of chapter 9 as a reference point, we don't really know a lot about them. So, what we do know about them is that there's three of them, and based on a few features that we've seen from the mutants, one is a bikini wearing clad childhood friend, while another one's a maid, and the other one wears high school girl clothes. Now, we don't know a lot about them, but I'm just going to tackle the first one who's appeared and has actually had a point in talking, and she actually has a cool ass transformation where she transforms into a dragon. It looks really cool. But the first one has the tag of childhood friend, and from the first chapters of her appearance, at least, this goes as we are shown a flashback of her talking with the dad while looking at Mutaro, fighting with a bird. Technically, she called him pitiful, but her dad told her that he was going to be an important person soon in the future, and he couldn't come into contact with him, at least for now. And anyway, back to the childhood part. She said she was a childhood friend, but based on the description or the backstory I just gave you, the loose rendition of it, she never actually had any confrontation with him. So that technically does not make her a childhood friend. It just makes her a faux childhood friend, I guess. At the very least, she does find him attractive by mutant standards. At least. I don't know what mutant standards of attractiveness are, but if she finds him attractive, that's good. Look, any scene where Mutaro gets hard gives me chuckles, because he really does get hard and he pops throbbing veins. Like a certain part of your body that gets hard. Your forearms. I don't know what you were thinking. Get that dirty shit out of your mind. Anyway, also, remember that it seems that his trouble are only the beginning, as he has 4 girls chasing after him, and also remember that he had never actually had any form of contact with anyone from the beginning of his life, as far as we know. So what do I think about this manga? I think it's a pretty good read for a good pastime if you're looking for something that has pretty seriously good artwork. I mean, seriously, look at that dragon. That is some good artwork. Of course, if you're fond of weird characters that have weird relationship dynamics with the main character, then you'd probably be fond of this manga. And I'm trying to make it a series where I actually recommend weird manga to people that I come across, and I think I'll make it a series on my channel. So if you're interested in this little series, hit that subscribe button, the like button, and thank you for watching.